victory. And stay in the loop on the latest events from Lynchburg Tourism. It's all right here. Local news, weather, sports, deals, and more at the lynchburgportal.com. Your gateway to everything Lynchburg.
You're stepping into the fast lane on the VTRN Sports app, 93.3 FM and 1320 AM Lynchburg, or by asking Alexa or Google Home, open VTRN Sports Lynchburg. Now, take the fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane.
Do you want to know what the significance of today is? Wednesday, February 4th? No, not the day where basically everybody is back to school except for Lynchburg City schools. Although they are on a 2-hour delay tomorrow. Thank goodness. I'm going to really restrain myself from having to play this soundbite and actually follow through on it.
Time to take a detour in the fast lane.
Because at some point we will get to more on this. I've got some more thoughts in a TroastLaw.com fast take in a humorous sense that might be coming your way later this week. I need the actual time to be able to get out to certain locations to actually do those fast takes rather than having to cobble them together like we have, even though some schools were back in session last Friday. Others waited until Thursday with a 2-hour delay to go back in session. I am a FIO kind of person. At some point, figure it out. It may not be pretty, but if you're looking for excuses to not be in school, why are we surprised then when people graduate and they are looking for excuses to not do work or show up to work and be productive members of society? And that does not mean everybody in Lynchburg or in Lynchburg City schools fit that description. By the way, for the record, I do believe the majority of the teachers, at least the ones with whom we've spoken and we love them, at Bedford Hills Elementary School, shout out to the Huskies, Husky way every day, they want to be back in school. But, as often is the case, bureaucratic administrative decision-making, not so much.
Ooh, yeah. I'm going to have to go ahead and sort of disagree with you there.
Like on the fact that most schools were back on Tuesday, even if on delay, and then certainly today, much like why we have a parent-teacher workday on Monday, even though we've hardly had any school in the last couple of weeks, or why we had a teacher workday just 5 to 6 days after we came back from the Christmas holiday. I don't get the schedule. No one asked me, but I had to do it. And obviously my self-control is lacking today because
after Ed's potentially unnecessary detour, let's get back on the road in the fast lane.
Because we actually meant to ask this question. What is the significance of today, Wednesday, February 4th? And because I've done the TroastLaw.com fast take, but to get my usher on for a second. Whoops. Yes, I clicked the wrong soundbite. It is one of those. Can you tell I'm ready for kids to be back in school, by the way? Can you tell? To get my usher on for a second, I haven't had a chance to get it posted to Fast Lane, Ed Lane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. But maybe you've answered the question of the significance of today in the world of sports. The significance of today is it is actually technically National Signing Day for college football programs. Now, it is hardly a drop in the ocean in terms of significance. Virginia Tech and Virginia had media availability. None of it really centered around the incoming high school classes, the majority of whom already agreed and signed back in December. There was some trickle-over effect after that. And then the majority of work took place in January when players entered the transfer portal and obviously announced their destinations, which, let's be real here, that is the big part of what was uncovered today, along with the fact that we finally got official confirmation with no real surprises for the Virginia Tech Hokies and their coaching staff. More on that in the Fast Five at 5-ish in just a bit. But no, here's the example of it. Jeff White, VirginiaSports.com, led off, as he often generally does, the press conferences with Tony Elliott for football and Ryan Odom for Virginia men's basketball. And I get why. It's either he or Jay James, who's the sideline reporter, great friend of ours, fantastic person. But they often lead off press conferences in media availability in certain settings. And Jeff White asked a question that really had nothing to do with the actual National Signing Day ceremonies that took place today.
Last year was the first time you brought in a transfer class of that size.
Mhm.
How much did that experience help you navigate the portal this time around?
Yeah, great question. I think one, the landscape changing kind of dictates the number and the size of the class.
So we paused right there from Tony Elliott answering Jeff White of VirginiaSports.com and his question, because it speaks to where we are. Today was more about hearing more official commentary on players who have transferred into a program from one college to the other. There are technically high school players who have signed, and shout out to those who have agreed to go to spots from around the area. We've seen some of them great coverage. Bob Alvis, the Sports with A podcast, not today, but tomorrow. Again, to get our usher on for a second. His schedule got adjusted, so we promoted it, but it's actually going to be tomorrow and not today. Sorry to burst your bubble if you were thinking it was going to happen today. You'll have to wait today. But he and Bryson Gordon of newsadvance.com and plenty of our other friends at media outlets around the area. Will Stafford with WSET, Ryan Moy and Jermaine Farrell at WFXR, Eric Johnson at and Dave Walls at WSLS and WDBJ respectively. You know, all very well covering this. But the majority of players who have signed from high school in going to college in this area, it really is players who are going on to one AA FCS or Division II or Division III football programs. Again, it's an amazing accomplishment if you can carry on after playing high school sports on a different level. But on a national scale and on a what's being discussed in the overall landscape of college athletics, it doesn't carry nearly the same amount of weight because, yes, Tony Elliott was pretty accurate in assessing that the landscape has changed. And part of it also is, you know, the number of players who have entered the transfer portal are wider than ever before. You hear from, you know, in our position, I don't know about you, TJ, but when you broadcast games, you hear from fans and parents and people around the program a lot. Some of them are thinking through the lens of their child, and I get it and understand that, and wanting what's best for their child. But the reality is, oftentimes, people don't just want what's best for your child for the child's purpose. The parents aren't usually this way, although some are. But a lot of people in the voices of these players now are thinking in their own selfish interest, which Tony Elliott discussed today and is worth mentioning.
The challenge is going to be going forward because guys want to play, right? Guys want to play. And then there's also some influences outside the program that their voices, you know, are becoming louder for the young people, not just at the University of Virginia, but just holistically.
Their voices are becoming louder. You know who those voices just might happen to be? Do you want to take a stab at this one? It's not really hard to figure out. Agents, and for those watching at VTR in Sports and Fastlane Headlane on Facebook Live and YouTube, agents said tongue-in-cheek and used with quotation marks there. Because there are some legitimate agents that are out there. The Jimmy Sexton, CAA, you know, Clint Dowdles of the world have their training people who are often in this particular space. And then obviously, you know, Rosenhaus has got his guy with Sean O'Dare, who's an NIL agent as well. There are plenty of others that are out there, but those are kind of some of the bigger name firms. They're people that have at least practiced this for a while. Then there are, quote, agents, end quote. And they're people that just see money even more in the short term because they're not really certified by the NFL Players Association. So they're not really going to be able to, let's be honest here, in some cases, leech off of these players and get something out of them. And so not thinking about where a player might get an education and have a comprehensive experience. It is literally just where can you get the most money immediately in every single spot. And yes, some families think this way as well. And some players and athletes and those around them do also. But Tony Elliott, I think, is hit the nail on the head on why today, even though it's big in our area for certain players who are signing with smaller colleges, why it's getting attention on the national level is the fact that this is a chance to really speak about what's transpiring with players who've transferred into a program, because the number of players entering the transfer portal are larger than ever.
In a 23-24 cycle, there was a total of, 4,500 that went in. The 24-25, it was a total of 4,500, right? So that's 9,000 over 2 years. We had 10,000 in 1 year. We had 4,500 in 1 day, and so I think that there's not a whole lot you can do with that. That's more the external influence saying and encouraging guys to move on.
External influence, encouraging guys to move on. I mean, it is what it is. Like, here's an example. This is one of my favorites, by the way, as you know, if you listen to the Fast Lane long enough. The forever a Crimson Tide, forever a Wahoo, now forever a Razorback. Hunter Osborne is going to be our example. Go to his Twitter profile. Like, just Google Hunter Osborne UVA. And his Twitter profile has at Razorback FB and then business inquiries in the site of his agency. Do you know what that's code for? That's code for agent. That's code for I am going to the highest bidder. Again, I don't begrudge these people for getting as much financially as they can at all, but it is part of the reason why, if you are a parent of a player from our area who is signed on with another program in a lower level, you're not getting the level of attention you normally would. And it's justified in the sense on a national scale, but on a lower level scale, it's worth also still mentioning these high school players and how impactful it is, like Jaden Coward of LCA, who's committed to Elon, or Pearson Brooks from Jefferson Forest, who's committed to Ferrum. Those are not earth-shattering moves in the landscape of college athletics. Let's call a spade a spade. But it is still worthwhile. It's just this day is changed significantly because it is viewed much differently in the context of broader athletics and where players really have their minds and where they are really looking to give their attention. Meanwhile, if you're driving down the road, your attention should be on what's ahead. States, or including Virginia, are feeling a greater emphasis on don't drive distracted and enforcement that is taking place, understandably so. In fact, that's a message that you need to remember, and it's worth remembering that if somebody is not driving properly and you are the victim of their auto accident, that's where your friends at Trost Law can help. 777-HURT and TrostLaw.com are ways you can learn about serving them because they have been serving our area for
not one, not two, not three, not four,
but over 4 decades, as LeBron James always likes to remind us. Meanwhile, speaking of LeBron James, his former teammate is the subject of
It's time for Fast Five at 5-ish. 5-ish minutes on 5 relevant topics done around 5 p.m.-ish. Ish, because our counting skills are kind of ish. Let's start with number 5.
Well, here's the interesting part about the LeBron James discussion. LeBron James' former teammate, Anthony Davis, has been traded to the Washington Wizards. Don't look now, and people are talking about how they are being brought back to relevancy. My question is, were they ever really relevant? Again, different person, but I had an interesting discussion one time with someone who was critiquing my work and mentioned we were discussing kind of the NBA on a broader level, and it's, shouldn't you stick local and talk about the Hornets and the Washington Wizards? Newsflash, TJ, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Is there a major appetite for the Washington Wizards or the Charlotte Hornets, especially if you're outside of the Charlotte metropolitan area? And yes, I am including even in the Washington, D.C. area, better known as the DMV.
Yeah, I would think so.
So you would disagree? You think there is a little bit of interest in those teams?
I do, because let me start with Charlotte for a minute. I think people see the growth that Charlotte's making with that young, captivating team. I love the Kobe White move because of it. I think that's going to help build a playoff team around young players like Brandon Miller, like Con Knipple, and obviously LaMelo Ball. And with Washington, I think with the kind of team they built, it's either a now or never move. It's like they want to just push into the playoffs. They don't care about rebuilding anymore outside of the draft picks they picked up. I think it's the perfect spot if you want to prove that you can make it to the playoffs and you're considered a superstar. That's the move to make.
So that's interesting. First of all, I love the fact that you disagree. I would go so far as to say I think there are people in the Charlotte area or at least around North Carolina that you could convince me that you would find people that care about the Charlotte Hornets. I can grant some leeway on that ever since they went back from the Bobcats back to the Hornets, which is what it always should have been to begin with. But the Washington area is the one where I'm a little more skeptical. I will say this, being back to relevance, it's been like since the 70s when they were relevant and they were the Washington Bullets. Like it has been almost a half century of that.
John Wall and Bradley Beal brought a lot of excitement, especially John Wall when he came fresh into the NBA as a rookie. He brought excitement there. I remember I went to a Wizards game there and they were selling out crowds, but it's been a long time since the Wizards have been considered relevant. But that's a whole mess they got to figure out. And I think it's going to take new ownership, kind of like with the Washington Commanders.
Yeah.
New ownership to get them back into the relevance.
Sure, but I will at least say this about the Wizards. They obviously, you can't be more dysfunctional than the Washington Commanders were under their prior owner in terms of all the baggage that went along with him. But I will give this to the Wizards. They added Trae Young in this offseason. They've now added Anthony Davis. Do I really think that that's a combination that's going to bring a championship?
If he stays healthy for 50 games, they're a competitive team.
I admire the effort to add that to Alex Sarr and what's probably going to be another high draft pick, which, if you can get one of those top 4 to 5 picks this year, everyone knows about Peterson or Debanza, Caleb Wilson for North Carolina, Boozer from Duke, the kid from Houston, as well as the kid from Arizona. I mean, you got 6 legitimate players. If you can get one of those, all of a sudden, don't look now, but maybe there's something there for the Washington Wizards. I admire the effort, but, and the jury will still be out on whether those first-round picks net anything to Dallas, which, again, Trey will have fun on that probably tomorrow in the morning warm-up, making fun with the Luka Doncic trade. But for the Washington Wizards, I will say this. At least it's got people talking about them in a way that nobody was doing 24 hours ago. And a shout out to Karita Parks of Parks PR, who said, this is not a PR crisis, but if anything is an example of positive publicity that is coming to the Washington Wizards from this particular move. Meanwhile, not so positive in the Washington, D.C. area.
Number 4.
The Washington Post executive editor Matt Murray said on Wednesday that the paper will be ending its sports coverage in its current form, although it will retain several sports reporters to do feature stories and cover sports more from a cultural and societal phenomenon. That's just totally different from when the New York Times, supposedly, I'll use air quotes here, shuttered their sports coverage, which, let's be real here, that was a merger with The Athletic when the New York Times acquired The Athletic. They just blended resources together. And this happens when large companies acquire and merge each other. It'll probably happen when NFL Network and ESPN consummate their merger, which has now been approved earlier this week, but when they start to actually merge the resources. This is going to be something that transpires. Look, newspapers we know have gone the way of kind of the dodo bird, so to speak. It's kind of gone towards extinction here in a lot of areas. But it's sad to see this still because I like good journalism. And people often don't appreciate the amount of effort and work that goes into it. It's easy to bag on why does newsadvance.com not have more coverage? They got one guy doing high school sports, and Liberty, Bryson Gordon. Does a phenomenal job with what's being asked of him, but they really haven't filled the void with the departure of Ben Cates. You see other outlets in the area as well. Charlottesville, Roanoke, Richmond, DNRonline.com. At most, they have 2 local sports staffers, one that may cover high schools, the other that may cover the big colleges. And in the reality is they're being asked to juggle multiple things on their plate. We appreciate the work of those that cover these sports. Bryson Gordon from newsadvance.com was in the morning warm-up today at VTR in Sports on Facebook Live and YouTube, and the morning warm-up wherever you listen to podcasts. But it is a little inside baseball, but it stinks because, look, I grew up being an admirer of writers like John Feinstein, R.I.P., Sally Jenkins, Tony Kornheiser, Michael Wilbon, among others who were all alums, whatever the term is, for the Washington Post. And to think that they're not putting out that type of content for as big of a brand as they are. Look, people are like, well, you find a way to monetize it. It's a lot easier said than done when the media people come out and say, well, you should find a way to monetize it. It can't be that hard. Until you've gone out and done sales, it is not that hard. TJ, I'm sure you can say this, but I can as well because we both have done sales. Once you go out and do sales, you realize it's a lot harder than the people who say it should be easy to monetize would lead you to believe.
Yeah, no, it's very hard in the sales world. So it's like what you told me when I first walked in, when you said, hey, I'm going to need you to do sales too, but understand some days you go 1 for 10 and other days you go hitless and then.
Yeah, I mean, you do. And it is what it is. You have some days where 3 calls nets appointments. You have some days where 1 gets you a response. Some days where you call a bunch and you're over. Like, it is what it is. It's very cyclical, and I don't have any way to describe it, but it is an indictment and indication of how hard it is to sell in a fragmented media space where the theory is you should have good coverage. The reality is there are more sources for that information, and it's harder to get the advertising dollar to commit to the coverage, which is the business reality of the closure of the Washington Post sports section. It's overhead. The biggest form of overhead for any company is their employees. Meanwhile, speaking of overhead and losing money,
Number 3.
Florida State has reportedly lost $434 million in athletics-related debt. They have amassed $437 million in athletics-related debt for the 2025 fiscal year, with 71% of the university's debt coming from athletics. If anything, maybe they should go a little further into the debt to get to 73% debt. But jokes aside about that for Florida State, I mean, when you're suing the ACC, let's be real here. Is there anything more expensive than prolonged legal cases? That and accountants. They charge by the hour for a reason. Let's not kid ourselves. Meanwhile, Florida State is involved in that. Plus, they have not necessarily been the most fiscally well run. And this explains the idea of why they have kept coaches like Mike Norvell and others longer than expected and went with a cheaper option to promote the since departed Leonard Hamilton, because they are finding a way, but they are really struggling at Florida State from a business profit and loss standpoint, which was also an explainer for why there was pressure on the ACC. Meanwhile, speaking of college football, on a much brighter note, Virginia Tech formally announced the appointments of Jarrett Ferguson, Brian Christ, Cam Phillips, Jerron Govea-Winslow among those who were retained for this coaching staff. What do three of those players have in common? Former players. They are former players. Jarrett Ferguson, Cam Phillips, and Jerron Govea-Winslow, who were with Virginia Tech. They are also all in support roles where James Franklin has worked around to have people that are in higher roles, but they brought in people and retained people who still have a connection to the school. You add on to that the fact that they announced their coaching staff changes and adjustments today. J.C. Price is not officially in a coaching capacity. Brent Pry is actually the only coach who's on staff who has former ties. He and Anthony Midget both, they are the two that have ties to Virginia Tech. But you've also got two to Virginia with Fontel Mines at wide receivers coach and Anthony Midget, one of the defensive backs coaches for Virginia Tech. I like the idea, again, of having people around with ties to the school, but especially in these support roles. Relative to the amount of money you are paying within an athletic department, it is not all that high. And relative to that amount of money that's been paid out to other people, it's realistically not the worst expenditure in the world to have people that are championing and cheerleading your cause. Meanwhile, championing and cheerleading in
number one,
the Lynchburg Hillcats, Erlen Serta has been named manager, taking over for Jordan Smith, who has moved on, still in Class A, but now at Fort Myers in the Minnesota Twins system. Some of these moves are based upon how an organization views the desire for development. And some of it is also the fact that when you're talking about in coaching, in baseball in particular, but in a lot of coaching, two things happen. You get happy feet, and additionally, if you've done well, and Jordan Smith had done well, other organizations can take notice and want that type of service. And the Twins are in a spot where, like the Guardians, they need to build from within. They are not in your, nobody's in the Dodgers category, but even in your Braves, Blue Jays, Phillies, Orioles, Mets type category, where you can spend some amount of money and procure talent. They are in the draft and develop like a lot of those central teams are. The Guardians, the Brewers, the Royals, the Twins, the Reds, the Pirates, although they don't spend any money in Pittsburgh, but that's a different topic. Therefore, you're looking for those edges. The Twins are, but also it's not the worst idea in the world if you're the Hillcats to just have a different voice that comes in. Jordan Smith had a fantastic run, but Erlen Serta was there. He was around it, but also his delivery and approach is different, and it's a chance to start fresh when the roster resets as well. Meanwhile, when we return in the Fast Lane, we have gotten some of your feedback on some other potential developments. We will get to that and on some thoughts we've discussed. When we return, then we'll connect with Amy Trask, friend of ours in the Fast Lane. All of that's still to come on the VTRN Sports app. And as that smart speaker, open VTRN Sports. Keep your thoughts coming at Fast Lane Ed Lane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
Feller Chevrolet is now Apple Chevrolet. While the name's changed, we're still the same trusted Feller's team. Same management, same knowledgeable parts and service, same techs, same professional sales staff. With over 200 years of collective experience, we'll continue growing stronger alongside our community. From the newest Chevrolets to top quality pre-owned vehicles, Apple Chevrolet delivers the same unmatched customer service. Visit us at driveapple.com. Apple Chevrolet of Alta Vista, powered by the community we serve.
You're seriously considering buying investment property, but you're unsure of all the steps. That's where we come in at Brownstone Properties. We're navigating different home investment journeys daily, just as we've done for decades. From buying with one of our licensed realtors to a full-service property management after the purchase, Brownstone Properties will walk with you step by step on your real estate investment journey. For a free initial consultation, call or visit us online today at brownstoneproperties.com.
New year can mean new changes in your life, but you know what will never change? The great deals that you get on InsaneRadioDeals.com. And we don't just feed your taste buds, but we feed your adventurous side, your hobbies, your interests, with great rates on Rise Up Climbing Passes, Aquatrek Adventures, and Cross-White Athletics Club. Or if you're a sports nerd like me, we got gift certificates for a SeaOfRed.com and BNC Sports located at River Ridge Mall. All this and more at InsaneRadioDeals.com.
Do you want to experience the benefit of radio and digital advertising for your business, but have no or limited funds to advertise? Let us tell you about InsaneRadioDeals.com. No cash needed. We will advertise your business on our 8 over-the-air AM and FM stations and our digital platforms that distribute out news talk, sports, and classic hits in exchange for gift cards, tickets, or experiences that will be used for your business. This allows you to advertise across the entire Virginia Talk Radio network without any cash needed and to generate a large amount of new business. Last year, we started over 1.4 million digital streams on our online platforms. No Lynchburg-based group reaches more people. So VTRN and InsaneRadioDeals.com is the place where your business gets heard. Want to learn more? Call Melinda 434-534-6100 or email info@VirginiaTalkRadioNetwork.com. That is 434-534-6100 or info@VirginiaTalkRadioNetwork.com.
Hi, I'm Zach Mackey, the voice of Virginia Tech Hokies men's basketball. Start jumping. This is your home for the Hokies. VTRN Sports 93.3 FM and the VTRN Sports app.
Hi, this is Bill Roth, voice of Virginia Tech football. You're listening to The Fast Lane with Ed Lane and Trey Lyle. Join the chat at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram.
Qualifying heat races are done. The green flag will drop at 6:20 p.m. tonight on Fox and on your MRN radio affiliate. We are not one, but they do a great job, and we appreciate Alex Hayden and Steve Post, who join us regularly in the Fast Lane and will as the NASCAR season gets underway. It actually really gets underway next week with Speed Weeks taking place, and then next Sunday, a week after this Super Bowl Sunday, the Daytona 500. By the way, you can hear the Super Bowl 2 o'clock airtime right here on the VTRN Sports app. And we bring that up, of course, because Ty Gibbs qualifying third for this event at Bowman Gray Stadium behind the Liberty University driver, although he's not in that car sponsorship tonight. William Byron, who's in second. Kyle Larson will roll off from the pole. We'll see what happens with a race that I don't know if you can take a whole lot away from it, given the weather conditions. Although, hey, we've seen plenty of races at Martinsville where it's about the same temperature, really cold earlier in the season. Meanwhile, time for some different kind of fan feedback. And yes, to that, we go to Martinsville. Excuse me for a little bit of that right now.
Come join the chat or give us a piece of your mind. Trey Lyle VT and Fastlane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Now, it's time for fan feedback in the Fastlane.
So one is on the NFL. Tsunami Tommy from the Martinsville area and a listener at Fastlane Ed Lane on the podcast platforms and the VTRN Sports app. We're grateful for that. I don't know if he does asks his smart speaker as well to open VTRN Sports, but Tsunami Tommy has chimed in on two things, one of which is the NFL. If the rumors were true that Bill Polian rejected Bill Belichick, that would be right up there with the one person that kept Jeter from the Hall for being unanimous in Major League Baseball. To not let Belichick in on his first round was the definition of petty. I've never cared for him, not one bit. This, however, is one of the most absurd sports stories of all time. I'm talking top 5 easily. I get the whole Spygate or even Deflategate, but I'm not even sure either of those trump his actual accomplishments. We've touched on this last week, but the pettiness of it is the reality. I actually understand. I don't agree with the explanation. And this is where you can understand somebody, but also respectfully disagree. But the guy from out in Kansas City who said that the reason he did not vote for Bill Belichick is because there were other candidates like L.C. Greenwood and Ken Anderson among them who were on their last chance to make it into the Hall of Fame. And he worried that if he didn't vote for him now, they may not get in because you would need then a special committee to vote those people in. I understand that if you feel convicted that one of those people should have gotten in. But I'll also say this. If it took this long for one of them to get voted into the Hall of Fame, were they belonging in the Hall of Really Good or in the Hall of Fame? Because I do believe there are different tiers to justifying being in one of those halls. And I disagree with that, but understand it. Meanwhile, the pettiness of it, Bill Pauline has come out and vehemently denied. Tony Dungy commented it earlier this week when speaking at press availability out at the Super Bowl out in California. And, to me, it's always been petty. I know we touched on this last week, but it's worth reiterating. Bill Belichick has had a frostier than needed relationship with the media. I get why he would do it in Boston. I think it's kind of ridiculous in North Carolina to have a frosty relationship with the media because it's a totally different environment. And if anything, they can be your greatest sales arm, like, Duke basketball has learned, particularly with John Shire and the availability there. So you can use the media in a way where they are your best arm, not your worst enemy. But in spite of all of that, Belichick's accomplishments, not at the college level, obviously, but at the professional level, even if you want to bring up how his record really isn't all that good without Tom Brady, the fact of the matter is he still managed to help develop and make Tom Brady and that Patriot team a dynasty during their tenure together, and they both worked well together. And I get it. Brady won a Super Bowl and made multiple playoffs without Belichick. Without Brady, Belichick has struggled. But it's not like this was a 1 or 2 year wonder. This was a decade and a half of unparalleled excellence in the NFL. Really about 2 decades, if you look at the run for Bill Belichick. Basically 2 decades. That's why he should be in the Hall of Fame in spite of that. One more from Tsunami Tommy, by the way, on our fan feedback, and we always appreciate it. Fast Lane, Ed Lane, however you listen to podcasts. There's a rumor out there that's going around. It's from CBC, College Basketball Central, which, let's be real here, is not the same as CBS. But there is a report that there could be mutual interest. That's the phrase. Quote, could be mutual interest between the Chicago Bulls and John Shire if the Bulls move on from Billy Donovan. So a couple things to think of this. One, remember, Coach K flirted with the Los Angeles Lakers job. Different era of college athletics. You could have an iron fist level of control in college basketball that you could not have in the NBA back in the day. Whereas, I think today, college basketball and the NBA are relatively similar. It's annual free agency in college basketball. And in the NBA, it's not annual free agency, but the stars have so much leverage that whenever they get upset, they can basically direct and get coaches fired. And these spineless NBA organizations just acquiesce as opposed to saying, we're going to do what we do. And if you then pout and demand a trade, we're not going to honor that either. That normally doesn't happen. The owners are too afraid to do something about it. Or let me rephrase it. Governors are afraid to do something about it. Got to be politically correct in NBA terminology. Ridiculous as it is. They don't own the players. They own the franchise and pay the players to work for them. But if we want to be super politically correct where everybody gets offended, let's use the term governors. John Shire from the Chicago Bulls, or to the Chicago Bulls. The rumors of it, quote, could be mutual interest, end quote. First of all, it doesn't mean he would actually want or take the job. Second of all, a lot of coaches will allow this stuff to percolate and fester, if nothing else, to continue to strengthen their leveraging position. In particular, within the college ranks, where you're not negotiating with skilled, seasoned businessmen the way that you are in the pros. In the pros, you're talking about owners. If you think millionaires are seasoned and hardened, try being a billionaire. So it's a lot different. They operate on not just a couple of I don't give a you-know-whats. They operate on a lot of those. So in college, it's different. But it's not the worst thing in the world to allow these rumors to circulate. It can continue to make sure you maintain a strong position. So I am not of the belief that John Shire is destined to leave Duke for the NBA. The landscapes, I think, are fairly similar. The NBA, it's not like it offers this bastion of stability, whereas at college, even if you retool annually, you get a level of grace. Not to mention that, and TJ, you're the Duke basketball fan here. He hasn't won a championship, but he has made a Final Four. He's only been there a couple of years. I think of all the coaches who've been promoted internally, most of them have been a disappointment. But John Shire is the exception to the rule, and I get the impression the Duke fan base really is pleased with him and are in no rush to try to usher him out or wish him to leave for another job.
Absolutely not. Even when Coach K was there, K referred to Shire for all his recruiting because of John Shire unique ability to be able to bring in recruits. In a world where people thought Duke was going to fall, John Shire still managed to get top recruits, had one of the best Duke teams, one of the best basketball teams, never won a championship last year. No one in the Duke fan base wants to usher John Shire out. And kind of like Dan Hurley, I don't think John Shire will take an NBA job unless he feels like it's the best path for him. I think he's a Duke Blue Devil.
I would say so. I mean, again, I understand the college landscape is fractured in a number of ways, but to me, the college basketball and NBA landscapes are relatively similar. I get the NBA has more structure in air quotes, but it's not. The players still have so much power, much like they do in the college game. Or as Melissa McCarthy will remind us, they have
lots of power.
As our girl Melissa McCarthy is want to remind us.
Right.
But it's not like the NFL and college football, whereas the NFL coaches get fired quickly, but there is a level of structure to your operation. Whereas college football, I mean, we talk about it all the time. Tony Elliott, we just read the stats off earlier in the Fast Lane, everybody where you listen to podcasts because
and guess what? We keep receipts.
Right there. And that being that, 4,500 players entered the transfer portal each of the last 2 seasons. This year, there were over 10,045 entered on one day versus the NFL where it's structured labor. So that's the big thing I think that's also worth keeping in mind. Yeah. And the other thing is there are a number of programs, particularly in college basketball, where if you're working well and things are going great, you have a long leash. Whereas it doesn't take long in the NBA for things to go south. Unless you're like Eric Spoelstra with the Heat or the way the Spurs have operated, the Thunder too. There are a lot of organizations where they have success, but even a year or two after that, the coach is gone.
We thought JJ Redick was going to be he is an amazing coach, but it's so hard to direct an NBA team. You can't talk to recruits like you can NBA free agents. There's so much more to it. And unlike Tony Bennett, unlike Coach K and other coaches, Shire has adapted to this new era so well. I just don't see a world in why he would want to leave an environment that he thrives in.
Yeah, I would say so too. It's not like he's middling or the pressure has been loud, but he's had success there. Those are areas where you might want to leave. Duke's such a rare situation in college basketball, and Shire is young enough where he's come in right as the game has changed, and he has adapted very well to it. I don't believe in like all the ambiance of the Brotherhood of Duke, but the way they put it together is still a really good blend, and it's the priority sport at that school. I mean, let's be real here. Darian Mensah leaving for Miami is part and parcel because football, it's gotten more important to Duke, but it's not where basketball is, and I don't think it'll ever be on that level. I kind of view it like Arkansas views football, maybe Kentucky, where they'll invest some in the sport, but at those 3 schools, basketball is a major priority, and it's a totally different dynamic.
The rumors make sense. John Shire's from Chicago, and I get it. Bulls fans are ready to move on from Billy Donovan. I imagine he'll be gone after this year if he's not fired after the All-Star weekend, But I just feel like you can't expect a college coach to be able to adapt to a pro level. I know this is football. Look at Urban Meyer. Meyer could not get to save his life.
I don't know if he can handle modern college where players have more power.
It's just so rare, though. I mean, we watched Nick Saban go to the NFL and have some success, but went back to college. Now he's considered Mount Rushmore level coaching.
That's a very good point indeed. And again, I think it's totally different in college versus the NFL because there is such a structured level of labor and how it is regulated in the NFL and how management and ownership has the upper hand on the players versus college football where the players are free agents annually. Like it's flipped. Whereas in college basketball and the NBA, the players have all the leverage, even though there is an organized labor structure in the NBA. And I think that's why the appeal of jumping from like college football to the pros, Jeff Hafley from BC to defensive coordinator with the Packers and now the head coach with the Miami Dolphins is an example that many of us remember from Boston College.
Yeah.
Whereas, you will see that in college football and hey, I just want to get out of it. The pro is more structured, even though you're hired to be fired versus in basketball. I think there's less of a rush because the players still have all the power in college basketball. Meanwhile, we will get some different perspective on this when we return. Amy Trask, friend of ours, slated to step into the fast lane. We will get her perspective. She has been patiently waiting for us, and we look forward to connecting with her. She might be having an interesting day dealing with us. Hopefully, we can brighten the mood for her out in California when we return in the Fast Lane on the VTRN Sports app, and ask that smart speaker, open VTRN Sports.
Here we grow again at the Sheeler Motor Mile. It's here, the all-new Motor Mile Chevrolet and Buick in Radford. More brands, more selection, and the same exceptional service you expect from a trusted community partner. Whether you're shopping Chevrolet or Buick, you'll find quality, value, and a team that puts you first. From rugged trucks and SUVs to stylish cars and family-friendly vehicles, the Motor Mile has something for everyone. With straightforward pricing and top dollar for your trade, there's no better place to buy. Bring us your trade, newer, older, paid off or not, and see why your car is worth more on the Motor Mile. Plus, with more inventory arriving daily, now is the time to shop the Motor Mile. Sheeler owns the finance company and makes getting approved for credit simple and easy on the Motor Mile. Flexible financing options for every budget to get you on the road fast. Experience the Motor Mile at 3 convenient locations: Christiansburg, Radford, and Pulaski. For over 50 years, we've got Southwest Virginia covered. The all-new Motor Mile Chevrolet and Buick in Radford. Certified friendly staff. No games, no gimmicks. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at MotorMileChevroletBuick.com.
Whether you're facing a tough season or looking for support to overcome life's obstacles, Central Virginia Counseling is here for you. Central Virginia Counseling is accepting new clients at both Lynchburg locations on Wigington Road and Timberlake Road. And telehealth is available anywhere in Virginia. Serving children, teens, and adults, our counselors are equipped with diverse skill sets to help you on your journey. For more information, visit us at centralvirginiacounseling.com.
Hey, small to medium business owners, if you're frustrated with slow IT support, high costs, or paying for services you just don't use, it's time for a change. Hi, I'm Colt with We Fix Stupid Computers. We provide reliable on-site and remote support tailored for businesses just like yours. And we go beyond just fixing problems. We empower your staff with real tech knowledge so they can work smarter every day. From repairs to training to full IT support, we save you time, stress, and money. Call We Fix Stupid Computers, 434-525-8590. Where smart support meets real savings.
At the Farmers Bank of Appomattox, we believe personal banking should be as rooted in the community as you are. Whether managing your business banking, saving for your family's dream home, or juggling daily expenses with our mobile app, we offer tailored solutions with a local touch. Experience the security of a bank that knows your name and the convenience of modern technology. Visit us today to grow your financial future right here at home. The Farmers Bank of Appomattox, your community, your bank, your future.
New year can mean new changes in your life, but you know what will never change? The great deals that you get on InsaneRadioDeals.com. And we don't just feed your taste buds, but we feed your adventurous side, your hobbies, your interests, with great rates on Rise Up climbing passes, Aquatrek Adventures, and Cross-White Athletics Club. Or if you're a sports nerd like me, we've got gift certificates for a SeaOfRed.com and B&C Sports located at River Ridge Mall. All this and more at InsaneRadioDeals.com.
Former NFL quarterback and recent analyst Steve Berline recently joined the Fast Lane to talk about what skill he's most impressed with when it comes to Commanders quarterback Jaden Daniels.
Obviously he has the ability athletically to make plays and score very quickly, but I think the most impressive thing is the way that he's been able to sit back in the pocket, go through his reads, stay patient, not try to force things, take the check down if nothing's there up the field, or make a play with his feet, which we all know he does extremely well. That, to me, has been the most important aspect of it and the part that I think really deserves to be recognized.
Listen to great interviews and analysis like this one on the Fast Lane, weekday afternoons, 5 to 6 p.m. on VTRN Sports, 93.3 FM, 1320 AM, as your smart speaker, open VTRN Sports and stream on the VTRN Sports app. And streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/@VTRN Sports Lynchburg.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
Yes, indeed. It is our time to finally look ahead to Super Bowl 56, which you can hear 2 p.m. this coming Sunday right here on the VTRN Sports app after Virginia Tech Lady Hokies basketball with the great Evan Hughes, who was with Trey Lyle in the morning warm-up yesterday.
And guess what? We keep receipts.
At the morning warm-up or VTRN Sports, Facebook Live, YouTube, and however you consume your podcasts. Meanwhile, somebody who may have heard a little bit of our conversation that TJ and I had in the last segment reacting to some fan feedback about the NFL versus college game being drastically different in terms of the structure of those sports and those organizations is Amy Trask, who is familiar, of course, from observing both, but also having been the former CEO of the Radars and an analyst for CBS Sports, who is with us here in the Fast Lane and author of my favorite title of a book still, You Negotiate Like a Girl. Amy, thank you for joining us in the Fast Lane. We hope you are well. Am I off base, or is there some merit to my belief that one of the appeals for college football coaches that may not be in college basketball is college football has free agency, which is not structured. College professional football does have player procurement, which is structured, and that in and of itself makes it easier for planning.
Well, I think you do make a very, very good point. But before I dive into that, I want to thank you for having me. It is always an honor and a pleasure and a lot of fun to join you. And I misread your post earlier today when you said you had some glum news. I thought, oh my gosh, are they calling me coming on the show glum news? But I think I misread it. I hope I misread it. And I promise that I will not be gloomy.
No. Not gloomy when you come on. Probably gloomy when people have to hear me go on another "we have no school today" rant.
Um, remember no school days. Those are the great when you were the student. You raise a great point about coaching in college versus coaching in a professional league, but more so in the past than now. I think the NC2A is a giant mess. I think college sports it's complicated now. You've got players moving around as they should have the right to do, but there are structural issues, and then there's NIL issues, and there's portal issues. And look, do I think that college students should have the right to change schools? Yes, I do. Do I think that the manner in which things are being conducted right now is the right manner? No, I don't. And the only reason I raise that is I agree with the point you made, with the caveat I agreed with it more in the past. I don't agree with it as much now because it's simply one set of headaches in exchange for another set of headaches. No, you're not dealing with a salary cap. No, you're not dealing with some of the league structural issues, but you've got, no pun intended, since I'm sitting in California, the wild, wild west right now in college sports.
Yes, it is. It is very much the wild, wild west. The other thing that's at the root of this, and we touched on this, the glum news was touching on, National Signing Day is technically today, although it's really not a big deal because there's one this is so college sports, by the way. They have a fall National Signing Day, which is in the middle of the season, but they're still also trying to juggle players coming in, and they have a transfer portal before the season wraps up. And not to mention that so much of this is and I okay to do this. In the NFL, you would know better than anyone, our guest is Amy Trask, who wrote the book, no joke, You Negotiate Like a Girl. In professional football, you have, I'm not going to use my hands for this, you have agents. In college football, and I am going to use my hands for this, you have a lot of agents, said sarcastically and with the quotations for those looking at VTR in sports and Fastlane Edlane on the video feeds.
That's another good point. And let's also just back up 1 minute and talk about the age difference. I mean, raise your hand, and I know I'm not on camera right now. Thank you very much for that. You would not want me on camera right now. But raise your hand, and I will tell you, I am raising my hand. Raise your hand if you did dumb things when you were 17, 18, 19. I started college when I had just turned 17. So you're now asking kids of that age to be making decisions without agents. Again, there are agents in quotes. There's just a lot of ways these athletes, these students, these young people can be taken advantage of. And I find that concerning. And look, I'm going to double down on this again because I'm emphatic about it. When you are a student, when you are a prospective college student, and a coach comes into your home and recruits you and convinces you or convinces your family that that's the college for you, and then you get there and that coach leaves, I've believed for decades and decades and decades that when that happens, if that coach who recruited you leaves, you absolutely have the right to leave. Well, now they have the right to leave even when the coach doesn't. But there's just no one there really to protect most of these athletes.
That is very true. And oftentimes they're not in an age where they have the right guidance for making the best decision. Meanwhile, the right guidance for making the best decision at some point has to happen when you were an adult. And plenty of adults have not made the best decision, and we don't need to get into the political side of things, but there is an intersection of politics and sports that we can discuss with someone who has experience being around very wealthy individuals, including NFL owners. That's Amy Trask, CBS sports analyst, who is with us in the Fast Lane. And it is good news, not glum news, that she is with us today. Steve Tisch of the Giants, Josh Harris, but a different element of the Washington Commanders, were both mentioned in the Epstein files. First of all, I know he's not in the NFL anymore, but we can only imagine that, if Dan Snyder were only in the Washington Commanders, it must have been an entirely different thing, because that guy had way more baggage than seemingly anybody.
Is that a question about Dan Snyder? Because
no. Well, it can be, but I don't know if there are any more owners in the NFL who carried the amount of baggage that he did.
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I misunderstood. Look, my belief as to all of this is consistency, consistency, consistency. If that which had been revealed about team owners had been revealed about players, would the league and would the teams be taking the same approach with players that they will take with owners? Now, we don't know ultimately what will happen with Steve and with Josh. We don't know what their teams will ultimately do, if anything. We don't know what the league will ultimately do, if anything. But what I feel very, very strongly about is if players would have been punished, either suspended or fined or otherwise sanctioned for what these owners have apparently done, then the standard should be the same, if not higher, for owners than it should be for players. But we don't yet know what, if anything, the league will do.
Well, that's the big thing that is also brought up in this is we're not quite sure where things are going to go with Steve Tisch and Josh Harris, Giants minority owner, Washington Commanders majority owner, the two names that were mentioned in the Epstein files. And we don't need to get into the political side of things. We will divert people to the Virginia's Talk Station app, our sister stations, if they want the political commentary on that, because that's not what we're doing today in the Fast Lane. But this is the type of question that Roger Goodell had to address at Super Bowl Media Days earlier this week. Do you ultimately believe that this is the type of thing that the NFL will act on, or is this the classic case of we'll let more information unfold?
I don't know. I heard what Roger said. I understood his point, and I agreed with his point that they need to find out all the detail and all the information they can and make the right decision, not a quick decision. But I don't have a prediction as to what that decision will be.
Amy Trask with us here in the Fast Lane, CBS Sports NFL analyst, former CEO of the Raiders and author of the book, You Negotiate Like a Girl. You get negotiations in a labor sense as well. We know the NFL could go through that again. They don't have a labor agreement that expires until 2031, so that part is firmly in stone. But one of the key negotiating points that has been seeded already is the idea of an 18th game. Robert Kraft brought it up a couple of weeks ago and mentioned that the league, quote, will, end quote, extend to 18 games. We know that seems to be a desire of the league. Meanwhile, Commissioner Goodell spoke with the media a couple of days ago and kind of backed off of that to a certain extent. What is your read on how this is being handled through the media and through the fan commentary?
Well, this might strike you as odd given my role now in the media, but I don't think these things should be handled through the media. I have a very, very, very different view on negotiations than most people. We often hear people say of negotiations, quote, let's sit across the table and negotiate with one another, close quote. Well, if the goal is to reach a deal, then why do you want to sit across the table from one another? And why do you want to negotiate with one another? If the goal is to reach a deal, sit on the same side of the table and collaborate and work to make a deal. And in that regard, if 18 games is important to the league, and I strongly, strongly believe it is, well, then the Players Association should say, great, we understand it's important to you. Here's what's important to us. Now let's find a way to compromise, and let's find a way to get you what's important to you and get us what's important to us and reach a deal. The NFLPA is in a position of strength in this regard if the league truly wants 18 games, which I believe it does. But first things first, the NFLPA has got to find the right leader. They have an interim leader right now. They've got to settle upon a full-time leader. And there has not been a leader of the NFLPA like Gene Upshaw since Gene Upshaw passed away. And they've got to replace the leadership there with leadership like they used to have under Gene.
You mentioned Gene. What made Gene Upshaw the type of leader that the NFLPA should strive to find again?
Oh, he was, people that are listening to your show, football fans, know him to be a tremendous, tremendous player. I knew him to be a tremendous, tremendous man. He did the right thing. He knew how to lead. He was a leader on the field. He was a leader off the field. A very, very smart businessman and someone who understood, look, if our goal, as between the NFLPA and the NFL, is to reach a deal, well, then let's try to reach a deal. But I'm going to protect our players as best I can because that's my responsibility. He was a good, good, good businessman, a good human being. He had a tremendous, tremendous impact on my career from the very, very, very start, and I miss him to this day.
Strong words from Amy Trask with us here in the Fast Lane. Amy, we bring up that as well as she joins us from CBS Sports as an analyst and, of course, author of You Negotiate Like a Girl. The Rooney Rule itself, it comes under scrutiny once again because 10 openings in the NFL cycle, only one was a minority, Robert Saleh with the Tennessee Titans. Again, this is where you can tell me if I'm on base or off base. There's the theory that there's not enough minority candidates, and it's a racially decided reasoning for it. Is it that the NFL owners view it through that prism, or they view it through the prism of what they can sell to the fans, and the easiest things for them seemingly are prior head coaching experience and the hot offensive mind, even if neither of them are all that hot?
Well, and of course, in the Super Bowl, we have two defensive coaches leading their teams. So to those who think only offensive minds are the answer at head coach, turn on that game on Sunday and maybe you'll change your mind. Look, there's 32 team owners, and actually I'll carve Green Bay out because they don't have a specific team owner, but they do have leadership. So 32 teams, 31 individual owners, 32 teams. Each one does business differently. I don't think it can be painted with one what's that saying? Painted with a one brush stroke or broadly brushed. Whatever that saying is, I don't think there's one answer for all 32 teams. Each team does it right. Do I believe that each team owner or each team decision maker, if the owner has delegated that authority, wants to make the decision that is going to help them win? Absolutely. Those who own teams want to win. Those who are involved with teams and know their jobs depend on winning want to win. But every single one of the teams approaches this differently. And I will take this moment to say that I had the great, great, great fortune of working for someone who decades and decades and decades before this was even a topic of discussion, hired without regard to race or gender or any other individuality which has any bearing on whether one can do a job. And I owe my career to the fact that he did, and that's the way everyone should hire.
Amy Trask with us here in the Fast Lane. Amy, we will wrap it up on this. This is the last question, and I guess we have to ask you to a certain extent. You can make a prediction if you want for Sunday's game, but more game flow. Are we in for a good game? Are we in for a blowout similar to last year? What can we expect when we tune in at 2 p.m. right here on VTRN Sports?
I'm going to answer that, but before that, I want to tell you one thing about Fast Lane. I think of you guys every single time I'm driving, and some jerk is going really, really, really slowly in the fast lane. We all know the fast lane is for passing or going fast, but anytime I'm behind someone who's going really, really, really slowly, but in the fast lane, I think of you guys, and then that makes me smile. So instead of wanting to sort of, do too much honking and too much flashing of my lights, okay, I do a lot of that, but I always think of you guys and smile. So thank you for having me on. And to answer your question, I think we're going to get a good game. I love a defensive struggle. We once won a game 7-6. I thought it was a thing of beauty. Many, many, many people want high scoring offensive showdowns. I love a defensive struggle. And we are going to watch the team that gives up the fewest points per game, or that gave up the fewest points per game this season, against the team that gave up the fourth fewest points this season. I think we're going to get a great game. I think it's going to be a defensive struggle. I hope it's a defensive struggle.
I would love it. Defensive struggle means a close game by default, which in and of itself obviously is great for our listenership right here on VTRN Sports, but not as good as having Amy Trask in the fast lane and praising us and remembering us for people that need to respect the fast lane rather than being left lane abusers, left lane lollygaggers.
Exactly.
Oh, it just drives me nuts when I have to deal with that. And they go super slow, and it's like they have the clueless look on their face, and it's like, should they really be driving? Do they understand what they're doing here?
And I'm bad about it because when I'm behind someone who's going very, very, very slowly in the fast lane, I do the thing where I flash my lights at them, and then I do the
Yep.
thing where I honk, and sometimes I might say things, and and then I think of you and I relax.
To get my usher on for a moment, I must confess that, being somebody who has grown up following NASCAR, when they go really slow, I do the whole thing where they turn sharp to the right and the left, like they're trying to clean the debris off their tires and keep it warm because they're under caution. It's like, we're going so slow, we might as well use the time. And it is maybe a passive aggressive sign of disrespect for them as well.
You and I better not be, driving next to each other at the same time because we might have a little too much fun.
Oh, we definitely might, but we will at least know how to use the left lane appropriately.
Yes, we will.
Amy Trask with us in the fast lane. Amy, it truly is always a pleasure. Enjoy the action this coming Sunday. Thank you very much for your time as always, and we look forward to speaking again soon.
Thank you for having me.
Amy Trask with us in the fast lane. That does it for us today on VTRN Sports app. Asking your smart speaker, open VTRN Sports, W227BG Timberlake, WVGM Ames Lynchburg, WMNA Gretna, Danville, Southside, and all across the Virginia Talk Radio Network. We are back tomorrow, 5 to 6 p.m. right here on VTRN Sports, your home for the best play-by-play, including tomorrow, Virginia Tech Lady Hokies basketball.